Welcome to the winery at 100 Hills. I'm Stephen Duckett, the winemaker, and we thought we'd just spend a little time this morning talking a little bit about these two very interesting wines that we created back in 2018. An important part of winemaking here at 100 Hills, in fact, winemaking in the traditional method for sparkling generally, is what's called dosage. And dosage is the process right at the end of the wine's aging of reintroducing a small liqueur and a tiny, tiny amount of sugar just to balance the wines and to allow them to gain more complexity as they age. We are a little unusual here at 100 Hills. I'm very serious about expressing our terroir here, our sense of place and the vintage. And so when we create dosage liqueurs, unusually, we use exactly the same wine that we've kept in Magnum all those years to do so. We take the lees that settled in the bottle and aged with the wines for many years, and we remove that under pressure, and we just add back a little bit of the same wine with a little bit of sugar. So literally 2 grams, 3 grams, 4 grams, 5 grams per litre of sugar to really balance the wines and allow them to evolve a little further. We sit around the table when we think the wines are broadly ready, and we taste a huge range of those combinations just to see where we think the balance point is. And dosage is a very important point in the creation of beautiful, fine, sparkling wines. We're really looking for what are called Maillard reactions to take place as the wine ages on cork, once it's been corked. And those allow some beautiful flavours, some quite complex flavours to evolve and really round out the wines, perhaps create, in our Chardonnays, particularly those honeyed notes that people love in older sparklings. And in our Pinot Noirs, perhaps some more savoury notes that complement the wines in really interesting ways. So in 2018, we tasted for the first time the base wines for what became both of these wines. These are in fact based on exactly the same base wines and exactly the same wines that have been through second fermentations. When we came to the dosage trials, we always have at the side an example of the wine with no dosage sugars at all. That's usually just to give us an impression of the wine in its raw form and to help us understand what's happening and what the very small amounts of sugar are doing to the balance points of the wine. When we came to this wine, the wine with no sugars at all was really delicious, and that is unusual in England. You wouldn't really expect that to be the case. Our wines have a lot of acidity. They certainly did in 2018. They certainly did with this wine. I mean, it comes from some beautiful parcels of vines, some beautiful Chardonnay up on our hillside, and some beautiful Pinot Noirs on the winery bank up in the far corner for those of you who've been here and seen the estate. And we were really surprised at how beautiful these wines with no sugar at all. Now you're looking for how the wines evolve, not just how they are today at the point you taste for those dosage trials. And we know that as soon as you add even a gram of disgorging sugars, you lose a few notes, some beautiful green notes, I'd always describe them. So for me, particularly, there's a grapefruit zest note that is there in a number of our wines without any disgorging sugars. And those are lovely notes. They normally lost and meld in as we create the final wines, but they're very interesting. We felt Zero Dosage is something I said I'd never do. I think the way wines evolve from the sugars at dosage is important to the finished wines. So when we were tasting, and it's often the case when you do disgorging trials, there were in fact 2 points at which we felt the wines were really interesting, and one was more about how we thought the wines would evolve, and one was more about how we felt the wine was now. And certainly in an evolutionary sense, we found at about 4 grams a litre, so an extra brut dosage, very, very little addition of sugar, we felt this had the potential to create some really lovely notes. And in Illustration No.1, that's exactly what's happened. You've got these beautiful ripe pear notes, baked apple notes, some of the familiar stone fruits, particularly white peach, I think, in this wine. And for me, and I'm sure for those of you who've enjoyed it or are going to enjoy it, there's this sense of a fresh baked apple pie when you have this wine. It's just some beautiful notes to it. It's a classical wine from 100 Hills, and I think it's one that's been incredibly popular. We now only keep this together with the Zero Dosage because they are exactly the same wines, it's just the sugars that are different. And the Zero Dosage has gone on and will continue to go on to be a really distinctive wine. It's got ripe lemons, that grapefruit zest note I talked about earlier, some real orange citrus you can really enjoy and explore. But there's a sweet pastry note to it, maybe baking spice it always reminds me of. And we even serve them in two different glasses. I mean, here I've got an example of a Riedel's English sparkling glass, which is nice and broad, allows a bit of oxygen into the wine, and certainly for our Zero Dosage, it sort of allows it to express itself quite quickly in the glass and for people to enjoy in that way. And over here we've got the collaboration between Jancis Robinson and Richard Brendan. Richard is a wonderful English glassmaker. This is a glass that expresses many of our wines beautifully. But together, I do taste them side by side with friends. If you want to understand a little more about how beautiful English sparklings are made, fine English sparklings are made, these two wines tell you a lot. This tells you what Dosage sugars are all about, what those Maillard reactions are doing in wines, and how aging a wine on cork, which I hope many of you will have a chance to do with these wines, how it evolves the wines and brings about really interesting and more generous flavours and aromas to the wine. But there's still a lot to enjoy in this Zero Dosage. This is one of the purest forms of an English sparkling you'll ever taste. And it has all that freshness and vibrancy, particularly for those of you who love our Blanc de Blancs. This has lots of those characteristics and is just an absolutely delightful wine. I really hope, if you've been lucky to be given those perhaps as a gift, that you get to enjoy them side by side and get to learn a little more about 100 Hills, and do come and try some of our other wines. We have a great variety out there.